Please describe your job title and primary duties.
I was a server, so when people would first come through the door, you have to make sure that they're sat if a hostess isn't on duty. After you seat them, you greet them, take a drink order. IHOP was really serious about taking an order right away, so if they came in and sat down and you took their drink order and they were ready to order their food right then, you made sure to get it. If they weren't ready, you'd go get their drinks, bring those back, probably start up some conversation, ask them how their day is going. A lot of times when people go out to eat, they're looking for a conversation with their server. They like that part of the experience. So after that, when they order their food, make sure you got everything right. You have to learn the computer system so you can put all of that stuff in. And then after you're finished with that, take their food out, make sure they're happy, make sure after a few bites in, everything is tasting how they want it to taste. Cash them out when they're all finished with their food and make sure that the table's all clean and that they had a good experience.
What was the work environment like?
It could be very fast-paced, especially in the morning shifts because it is the International House of Pancakes. So if you plan on working morning shifts, be ready for that. The midday shift was a lot slower, but since the IHOP that I worked at was 24 hours, and most of them are, the late night shift around 3 o'clock in the morning also gets really, really busy. So those are usually the shifts that people are looking for, is the first or the thirds, because the seconds are a little bit slower.
What was your favorite part about working there?
I loved the people that I worked with and honestly the customers too. When I first started working there, I realized that a lot of the people I worked with went to the University of Toledo or went to Owens, and these are all schools in the area, so I got to meet other students. Not all of them had the same major as I did, but I would still see them in some of my extracurricular classes. So it wasn't just becoming friends with them at the restaurant, but then I would see them at school or I would see them around town, and it really expanded my horizons of the city.
Please describe a typical workday.
Well, you come in and you hope to get a table fast because usually when you come in, the first thing that happens is you get a table and you can start taking care of them. You got to make sure that the pass bar is clean, all of the food sections are taken care of. Cleanliness is always very important, so sanitizer water being switched out, those kinds of things.
Please describe the application and interview process.
IHOP is actually special because a lot of restaurants these days you have to apply online, and that stresses a lot of people out. IHOP still has a paper application, so you can apply online or you can do it on paper. So I actually got to go in and sit down in the restaurant and fill out my application, and a manager came out right away and spoke to me, and that made a huge difference in deciding where I wanted to work because I already felt like I had a connection with the manager just by coming in and applying, and a lot of places aren't like that.
What questions did the interviewer ask during the job interview?
Well, they asked me if I had ever served before, and I actually hadn't. This was my first serving job. I had worked before, but this was very different because you have to talk to almost everybody that comes through that door, and you have to be personable. So they asked me, are you going to be afraid to talk to people? Are you nervous? Are you shy? And is that something that you think you could overcome if you were hired here? So that was a big part of the interview.
How were you notified that you received the job?
I actually received a call that night from the same manager that I spoke to when I was applying, and she asked me if I could come in the next day for like an actual interview because all she really did was talk to me a little bit when I was actually applying. So I came in for an actual interview, and she told me right then and there at the interview that I was hired, and I started filling out my paperwork right then. So it was fantastic, but you do have to make sure that you're ready to get a job right away when you apply there because it's usually very fast.
What other advice would you give to a job seeker looking to gain employment?
Make sure that when you meet the person that might be hiring you or might be your manager later on, that you're giving a good first impression. Show up dressed nice, dressed well. If you know what the uniform is going to be like when you start working, try and show up in something that already looks like that because it makes it easier for the manager to picture you in that environment working with their fellow employees.